you probably find me, I'm pretty sure you find me that I always appreciate about these definitions, right? I always mention that how these definitions are so precise and so cool and all that, right? But sometimes you might come across some teachers, some books, they might see it a little bit differently. Okay, so they might say that they don't like these kind of definitions. Okay, and their main argument behind that is that they say these kind of definitions and these authors, they're influenced by what? They're influenced by Greek logics. Okay, so that is their argument. Now, whether, which is true, I'm not denying this is absolutely true. Most of these authors, late authors, meaning anyone who's coming after 2nd century or later in Hijrah, they are definitely influenced by Greek philosophy, without a doubt, right? So you will find the way they write their books, their arguments, everything follows that paradigm. So but the issue is, I'll mention 2 points and then inshallah I'll wrap up. First point is, okay, so what? So what? They are influenced by the Greek philosophy or Greek logic, because you have to understand the Greek philosophy, it is a big topic, big thing. It is not only about, because with the Greek philosophy, they deal with what? They deal with science, they deal with theology, they deal with, arguments, they deal with life, they deal with reality, they use everything. That's what they used to do. This Greek philosopher, they were really obsessed with their understanding, the way of their understanding. They thought they figured things out. They thought they are the pinnacle of intellect, right? So they wanted to find out everything using their logics. But when they did so, they, of course, they have to find out, they have to have some kind of tools, the tools that they use in order to use these kind of arguments, right? So one of the tool, it's a big topic. I cannot talk to you about everything, but one of the tool is this whole concept of jins and its aksam and jinsi. In all of this meaning, they like to divide things into meaningful conceptual categories. I'll just give you a simple example. If I say we're human, if you say human, they want to find, by the way, I'm giving a very lame way explaining because this is not the topic. I just wanted to come back to what my initial comment was, but you have to know something about their understanding. When they want to define human, they want to look at from container perspective first. So if you say human, they want to find what is the shared attributes. They will say, okay, humans are animals. Okay, so they'll say, see what they're doing? They're making a bigger container so that they can put human. Now, you have other animals also, right? Like, for example, cat or whatever, right? So how would they say, what is the difference, what is the differentiation between them and human? Then they will make a subcategory, which is what? Let's say one who speaks. I'm just coming out because many people, many philosophers try to explain human in many different ways. They all fail anyway because their logics are so weak. They're very strong, very cool, but there's flaws in it. You can easily defeat them. So you can say speaking animals, somebody who speaks. You see what they're doing? They're trying to define human. They're trying to define something by making a container, making a category. And the more you fine-tune category you can find, and better it is for you to define. So bottom line is they use this kind of technique, these categories, these definitions, what you see in all of these books, these are all coming from the Greek philosophy. They're all coming from the Greek logic, because these are the tools they use for their argument. So once they set things up, and then they will go use their arguments, which we're not interested in. Okay, so my point is, so what? If it's something that we can use for our benefit, there's no problem. If a complex things, we have to break a big problem into smaller containers in order to, make it easy for understanding, or you understand. So that's what they do, and this is precisely what happening with most of the authors right after, 2nd century of Hijrah. So what happened is it was actually completely destroying everything, because there were because the way they argue, their argument were very strong. Most of the Muslims, even the scholars, they didn't know how to counter argue with them, because the way they talk, they're very precise. They were very, they sounded very educated. They had their way of making arguments, very scientific way of argument. And that's how they'll say, okay, so prove that God is here, this and that, so these things would go on. And the Muslims were definitely having hard time coping up with them. And what does it remind you? Who can tell me what reminds you in our time right now? Is the atheist. They think the science is everything, and then they start, trying to analyze everything about based on science. They say we figured out everything, we don't need God. So all of these things were happening back then, but it was this Greek philosophy. And that's when Imam Ghazali came, and then he refuted this Greek philosophy in one of his book, and that gave the Muslim a little bit, a little bit something so that they can be content with, go about doing their business. Because other than that, if before that they were confused, Muslims were literally confused, and things were happening. But Imam Ghazali's work had flaws in it, and people like Ibn Rushd, who was a good Muslim, but he was a Greek philosopher, they argued and they laughed at Imam Ghazali because they can counter argue. The issue is that the philosophy is so deep. If you refute something, they can always come up with something else to refute you back. So things were happening. It was really bad for the Muslims at that time. So what happened is when Ibn Taymiyyah came, he completely destroyed the philosophy. He completely destroyed this philosophy from the root. And that after that, since then, in the whole Greek philosophy doesn't even exist. Right now, we don't have the Greek philosophy, but what we have is their tools. Those tools we use in our math, in our science, all this math logics, everything's coming. These are all coming from the Greek philosophy, but we just don't see it like that because we find their flaws, we understand their flaws. So nobody cares about Greek philosophy anymore. But the point is the tools that they introduce, the way they make arguments, the way they divide something, the way they define something, some of them are very, very useful. And this is what's happening with a lot of these authors. They are definitely influenced by the Greek philosophy, and you will see. I think that Ibn Hisham, he is even more influenced by the Greek philosophy, because when you read his explanation of Qatr-e-Nada, because he wrote the Qatr-e-Nada and he explained his own book, you will see how he feels about his definition. He will praise himself that this is why I meant that, this is why I use that word. You'll feel that he's feeling it, because then you will easily see that he's influenced by this kind of logic. So my first argument is that, so what? It came from the Greek philosophy. We're not coming to the same conclusion as what they did. Alhamdulillah, they made some tools. It becomes easier for students. It becomes a way for the scholars to define something precisely, so that it is easy to understand. That's fine. What's the problem? No problem. If that is the only argument, because you will come across teachers and books, they really, really, really despise these kind of things. So just make sure you have both sides in your mind. Second argument of mine is it's too late. Too bad, too late. Because whether we care, we like or not, this thing is embedded in our Islamic science. It is not only in Arabic language. This kind of tone, this kind of language, this kind of systematic way of defining things, it is embedded in every single science, which includes the fiqh, which includes the aqidah, not the content. The content is same. For example, here he's talking about what to do, alif and ta, blah, everything is same. But how do you talk about this? How do you define it? Those things you will find in every different science. So now, complaining it's not going to help, because if you're going to study any book, they will be defining everything like that. You have noun that's divided into these things. You have fiqh, that even the first chapter of the fiqh is water, or the cleanliness. They will divide it into two types of cleanliness. You have the cleanliness that, these and that. You will find this way of speaking throughout our entire science. So that is my second point, is that too bad, because we cannot do anything about this. It's there. And honestly, I not only that I don't have any problem, I think this is one of the best thing that we got from this Greek philosophy, because it was completely destroying. But if we think that, okay, fine, alhamdulillah, it helped us to structure or organize the sciences, okay, alhamdulillah, we get something. Do you understand? So sometimes the tools we can use, it's just that we don't have to come across in the same conclusion. That's the only thing I wanted to say. Okay, so because you are studying this kind of science, as I said, you have to be aware of many things. Not only the rules, you have to know how things works, how things are structured. So I give you a second opinion, because sometimes you might find people are really, really, really saying bad things about this definition and everything. So now you know. Okay, and if you want to know, okay, do we have any books, any Arabic books that is not following this kind of things? Yes, you have to read Kitab Sibawayh, which is, good luck reading that. I wish I had some of the, because I have to go back to my library and find out. I can show you how they defined some of the things that in the previously, which weren't influenced by the Greek philosophy. Their definitions very something that you have to think about. It's not that clear. It is clear. It is completely complete, meaning the definition has no problem, but it is not structured. It is not, the way we want to know. And for the fiqh, you have to read Risala by Imam Shafi. Okay, Imam Shafi's Risala is one of the earliest book that it is not influenced by the Greek philosophy. Other than these few major books, every other books you study, you will come across this kind of definitions. And you know me, so I don't mind. I think it's good things. It helps us as a student, make things easier. It's concise. That's good. Okay.